This is United for Biodiversity, the Alliance podcast, a platform that unites global voices in a call to action to protect our planet's rich biodiversity. Join us for critical insights and let's stand united for biodiversity.
Hi there. Welcome to this week's episode of United for Biodiversity, the Alliance podcast. I am your host, Guyana Wilberg, and today we place the spotlight on the work of Conservation International. What better guest for us to discuss this with than the head of the agency, Dr. Sanjayan. Dr. Sanjayan, welcome to our podcast. Thank you so much for being here. So I want to jump straight into our first question, Dr. Sanjayan. Being recognized as a Time 100 climate leader, hosting award-winning documentaries, and contributing to top scientific journals, you've become a leading voice in biodiversity conservation efforts. From your extensive career, what have you learned about the critical importance of biodiversity and why it matters to the planet's survival?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, my own background, I was born in Sri Lanka, but I actually grew up in West Africa. And as a child, being in the forest, I just fell in love with nature. I fell in love with things that moved. I think every child has that. And because of the circumstances of my childhood, I think I was allowed to cultivate it well into my teenage years. And so for me, I came straight from a place of I'm just fascinated by nature, by things that move, by wildlife. And it's what I surround myself with. It's my happy place. And I found a tribe or a band of people who similarly share that love. However, as we've kind of developed the science, we've started understanding that ultimately biodiversity really is the tapestry of life. So it is the infrastructure of the planet, and that everything we have, I mean, the shirt I'm wearing, this wooden table that I'm sitting at, the job I have, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food that we have, the pollination of the crops, soil fertility, ocean resilience, our climate itself is all dependent on this tapestry of life. It's taken almost 4 billion years to get here, and that's been done by stitching together life and that resilience that this planet has had to deal with major catastrophes has been buffered because of biodiversity. So as we've developed the science, we've realized that biodiversity really is the fundamental building blocks for the prosperity we have for us humans, for really everything we do. And it can all get traced back to species and how they interact with one another. Now, more recently, we've also become better at quantifying that and really understanding from a value perspective the value that it adds to our economies. And the reality is we're always underestimating it. And every study ends up creating a higher estimate for the value of biodiversity. But that increase in precision, when we understand the value biodiversity is actually playing in our economies, also helps us think about ways in which we might be able to protect it and restore it.
Dr. Sanjayan, I love that point that you made about biodiversity being the infrastructure of our planet. And on that very note, I want to talk a little bit about Conservation International and the role it plays. How does Conservation International view Guyana's leadership in biodiversity protection? And in what ways has this leadership, in your view, empowered Indigenous communities?
Guyana, as you know, way better than me, is often referred to as one of the greenest countries on earth. You have something like 87% of the country with intact forest cover. Your deforestation rates are very, very low, almost at zero. And very large areas of the country are protected or on the way to being formally recognized and protected. You have an astonishing coastline. And you have indigenous stewardship or ownership of a significant portion of the country. So what you have really is an amazing model for conservation. And that alone would be interesting, right? CI would very likely be working there simply for that reason alone. You still have the stewardship of the most precious commodity in the new known universe, which is the plethora of life. However, what makes things super interesting is that you also have a newfound source of development and wealth, and that comes from oil and gas. And the fact that you now have this resource in a country with such high biodiversity and such a history of conservation and inclusion of communities in the future of the country makes this maybe the most interesting place to help, to work with, to learn from. Because if Guyana can chart a path for prosperity for its communities and people while also protecting nature that we all need, not just Guyanese, we all need to survive, then it really is a pathway for development for every country on Earth.
I love that point too, because it is something that the leadership of this country has been talking about. And that is, it is possible to have very sustainable ways or approaches to biodiversity conservation alongside the development of one's natural resources. Those two can coexist. But what is your experience on this based on all that you've seen across the world? What's your thoughts?
Well, it's a hypothesis, right? It's a firm belief that we have. And as they say, the proof is in the pudding. So we're going to have to see how things develop in the future. But we're off to a very, very good start. We couldn't have asked for a better start. Unfortunately, the world, I mean, look, the country I grew up in, right, Sierra Leone, the motto of that country, I don't know if it's still the same, but certainly when I was a child, was the land of iron and diamonds. Diamonds. That's the motto, the land of iron and diamonds. So you would think this would be a place where people are happy, wealthy, doing well. I mean, you're sitting on iron and you're sitting on diamonds. Chances are you're a little country in West Africa, things are going to look bright for you. But from the minute we got there to the time we left, the country was on a slow and tragic path of unraveling. And once it went through this very horrific, very difficult civil war, and real upheaval and loss of democracy, loss of life. I went back in 2006 after the civil war had ended, after the war had ended in Sierra Leone. And, I met many people who said to me, we wish we never had diamonds and iron. The country might have been saved if not for the fact that we had this wealth that everyone wanted, right? Now, Sierra Leone today is on a great path. The president, the minister of environment, who I know personally, are doing their real utter best to put the country on track and really including its natural assets into their development thinking. But history is littered with these problems. And even in the West, you take a country like Norway and others where they have lots of oil and gas resources. What they've actually done for the most part is, at least historically, they've just exported the problems, right? So Guyana is in a unique place where you have this incredible confluence of a great resource that's been developed or discovered at a time when the world's attention is on this topic, and a leadership and government that is very open to thinking differently about it, and while at the same time still having something to protect. It's not like we're having to rebuild it. It's still there, and it's still there virtually intact. So, we do have the chance here to set a new path. And I really do believe, like you, I have to firmly believe that both things can sit side by side. If I was a Guyanese, I would want my country's, natural wealth and oil and gas and others to be developed for the benefit of the people. But at the same time, there's a lot of oil in the world. There's very little intact nature in the world. And in the long run, it's like dealing with something right now. We all need oil and gas. I'm going to get on a plane and fly to you next week. Guess how I'm going to do it? That plane is using gas, right? It's using oil. So let's not be hypocrites. We all need it. But in the long run, what the planet really is going to rely on is what you have in spades, which is nature, which is biodiversity. So it's sort of balancing what we need with what we can't live without.
That's a beautiful point. And on that note, Dr. Sanjayan, very quickly, I want to talk about the importance of this new role that Guyana wants to step into, and that is to pull together a global alliance of like minded individuals, stakeholders, nations to address the issue of biodiversity loss and to bring others on board regarding this fight to protect what is left. What are your thoughts on how Guyana can approach this new chapter of its leadership, its green leadership, and in achieving some tangible steps towards the 30 by 30 goal?
Yeah. So, Guyana has signed on to the 30 by 30. It's well on its pathway to achieving 30, perhaps before 30, right? 30% of the country under protection and better management before 2030. I think we desperately need leaders on the global stage to say this and to push this. We do have some leaders that we see, from the West. I think President Macron has been a consistent leader who stands up and speaks on behalf of nature. I think Mark Carney in Canada will do the same. So we have some G7 plus leaders who are doing this. I would expect the same to be from the UK and from Germany. But we need global leaders also from the global South. And that's where the growth is. That's where the biodiversity is. That's where the future of the planet is. And so when we have leaders in the global South who can stand on stage with credibility because they've done the work, and saying, yes, we know we have oil and gas and we could do nothing but just develop that. But we're willing to devote our resources thinking long term and thinking not just for the good of our country, but for the region and for the planet. I think it makes all the world of difference. Guyana is also a test bed, right? This is where we're going to try out things. Some things will work, some things won't. And we need to be kind to understand that, experimentation doesn't always work out. And we should be able to deal with some of those losses or failures while keeping our eye on the prize and moving it forward. As a oil and gas nation, Guyana has the opportunity to lead other nations who are who have similar opportunities, either in the future or currently have oil and gas as part of their, national economy. And as a high biodiversity country, we're talking about a really unique and rarefied club of just a few nations that really are at the very top of the list. I'm thinking Bhutan, I'm thinking Gabon, right? I'm thinking about countries like that who can really set the stage for biodiversity conservation in the long run. So super excited, to be there and really to help you in any way I can and in any way CI, Conservation International, can in championing this low carbon development strategy that President Ali and the government has put forward.
Dr. Sanjayan, I want to ask you for your closing remarks to nations as they receive the call from Guyana, they receive the call to join the Global Alliance. What would your message to them be?
Boy, that's a big question. I would say obviously join it, but more than that, participate in it, right? It's easy to join an alliance, sign something that ultimately is not meaningful to the people in your country. In the long run, the future of the planet rests with how we take care of nature. Nature tomorrow will be more valuable than it is today. And our investments in nature will pay off. There's no doubt about it. The question is, what's the curve look like? What's the shape of the slope, right? That's the piece that I can't predict. I also know that in the long run, I think humanity will get this right. But we might end up suffering a great deal before we get there. And that's the piece that hurts me the most. Let's shorten the distance between our ambition and what we can actually put on the table. So for countries, for governments, for nonprofits, for civil society, for companies, for corporations in particular, understand that the fabric of life, what you and your economies depend upon, is nature. And when all else fails, nature is the ultimate safety net for the people of the country and for the planet. And being able to invest side by side in developing the country, but developing it in such a way that it promotes a low carbon future, but also protects and restores nature at scale, not only provides green jobs in rural communities, but also ensures that your country will have the building blocks it needs for sustainable, long-term, positive development.
Dr. Sanjayan, I want to thank you so much for providing such thought-provoking insights on our podcast today. It was truly an honor, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
All right, take care. And to our audience, I want to thank you as well for joining us. Be sure to follow us next week, same time, same place, as we bring you more insights from international leaders. And we continue to share the message on the importance of protecting the world's biodiversity. I'm Guyana Wilberg. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to United for Biodiversity, the Alliance podcast. Be sure to follow us for more insightful episodes on our Spotify, LinkedIn, and Facebook accounts.